Dynamic Conversations, where families and stories come in all shapes and sizes. I come from a family of 12. You may be an only child. What matters is caring, sharing, and finding ways to relate to one another. Welcome to Family Dynamic Conversations. I'm your host, Janice Kingsbury. Thanks for joining me today. As I've always said, I'm from a large, extended family. And as the years go by, the family keeps expanding. It's fun to talk with those that are in the family a little bit, just to show their perspective in their family situation. My guest today is my sister Jeannie's daughter, and Jeannie is number 10 out of the 12 kids that I'm from. So welcome, Stephanie Wilkins. Hi, Stephanie.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Good.
Good.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. The holidays stressing you out at all? Are you good?
I'm good. My husband and I just got done with last minute shopping last night. So
wow. The 14th.
I still have to wrap. But everything is at least purchased and
good.
Either in my house or on the way. So
I'm just realizing day after day, I'm getting these packages, and I'm looking at this and going, when am I going to wrap all this stuff?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
We just went through them today and sorted per child. And I'm like, okay, well, it's usually 1 a.m. Christmas Day.
If you right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So you guys do Christmas morning. You don't do Christmas Eve things?
So my husband, Tom, his family traditionally always did Christmas Eve.
Okay.
And so we still do that. They'll come over to our house and we unwrap and all the, my kids get their gifts from that side then.
Oh, okay.
But then Santa comes Christmas morning.
Right.
We do our little thing and then we head over to somebody's house for the rest of the day to hang out and do kind of my side Christmas stuff. So
fun.
Yeah.
All right. So as I always ask my guests, what number are you and your family, and where were you born and raised?
I am number 4, the exact middle of 7, and born and raised Mankato, Minnesota, and I am still here, have not left.
Nice.
Yeah.
And the middle child, did you feel they had certain responsibilities as a middle child, or did you feel like there was pressure from the upper level or down from the lower level? How did that feel?
I don't know when it started, at like what age I was, but for some reason I felt like all of the responsibility on me. Okay. So I have 3 younger brothers and they were always fighting. So I felt as the older sister, I needed to stop that, mediate it, be the peacekeeper. But then I had 2 older brothers and 1 older sister.
Okay.
Who, my sister Shanna, she's 4 years older than I am.
Okay.
She wasn't really around. I didn't really have a relationship with her as sisters would, I guess, traditionally. Okay. So I always hung out with my younger 3 brothers. So we were always doing traditional boys stuff, right?
Yeah.
So Nick, my oldest brother, was kind of like Shanna, just kind of doing his own thing as the oldest, which at that time, from what I can remember, is sports, always weightlifting, and then listening to death music, as I call it. So then that left Ken, who's 2 years older than I am, and he was a terror, Janice. I mean, really? He found your weakness, and then he poked it until you blew up at him, and then he would run away giggling, and I was left with the cleanup, right? So
oh my God.
Again, as the middle kid, I don't know if I'm gonna take this burden on or if it naturally fell into my lap, but Ken would tease Robbie about something, get him pissed off. Well, Robbie wouldn't take it out on Ken. He would go to the younger Sean right below him and fight him about it. And the same thing with Sean. Ken would tease Sean about something, and then it was, well, I'm going to take it out on Steven, who's the youngest. And so those behaviors filtered down. So then Robbie would tease Sean. Sean would tease Steven. Steven had anger issues, so he would just blow up.
He had nowhere to go.
He had no
release.
I don't know. coping mechanisms. And so he would just blow up. And usually Sean was his target because Sean would be the one teasing him. And so then it was my job, I felt anyway at the time, to get in there and stop the fighting. And I don't know, peace keep. And Ken would try. He rarely ever picked on me right below him in the order. Okay. When he did, I don't think I gave him the reaction that he wanted. So he just realized, okay, whatever.
She's boring.
Move on to the next one. Yeah. He had many options. So, and then Shanna, I don't know. Shanna she wasn't round enough to fight with anyone, but if she got annoyed, she always had these really long nails and she would like pinch your skin with the nails. That was really the only thing that she would ever do. And then Nick, because he's buff and mean at the time, we just didn't mess with him. I mean, I have stories, Janice, of Ken would pick on Nick, right? And then when Nick would get mad, at least he had a longer fuse, but when Nick would get mad, Ken had to literally run and hide. He went on the roof one time of the house to avoid Nick. What did Nick do? He took the ladder away, and then Mom got a call from the neighbors and said, hey, your kid is trapped up on the roof. I don't know what's going on, but I saw one of them being chased around the house, and now he's on the roof. So then again, it was me being like, yeah, Mom, here's what happened. Yeah, so I did find myself, like, when my 3 younger siblings were, I guess, of a certain age where my parents felt comfortable, I would be the babysitter. Nick, Shanna, and Ken, the older 3, would be in the house, but it was kind of, they knew they could rely on me at least. Wow. To either keep the peace or whatever it would be, make dinner, clean, whatever, when they were out doing stuff, so sure. It just I think naturally fell kind of into my lap as being the
so the I think that kind of taught you. And my godchild, Ken, we need to talk.
yeah he comes off as his sweet little angel, right? No, everyone knows, at least in our family, he was a terror.
Well, I'll get some stories from him too.
Yeah, you should.
Take those.
He won't
admit
it, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember that. Yeah.
What are you talking about? Too funny. Yeah. Okay, so you are the caregiver, the peacekeeper, the cleaner-upper, the babysitter.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So now you have how many children yourself?
I have 3.
You have 3.
Yes.
So Carter is in the middle.
Yes.
And has he taken on those kind of, or because there's only one above and one below?
So Mackenzie, the oldest, she just turned 16.
Wow.
She is me, basically. Okay. I can rely on her for everything. And I find myself doing what my mom did to me. Like, hey, I need the house cleaned and I'm not going to have time to do it. So can you do it? And she's more than happy to help me. So she has taken on that for sure. Peacekeeper, caregiver, house cleaner. Okay. She's the one that, and I don't know, like when she was 5 or 6 years old, she just acted like she was 10 or 12 years old. She's always been like way beyond her years, just more mature. It's just crazy. Yeah. So I think she just, in my eyes, grew up faster than like what she is in age. And so I just kind of latched onto that. And I'm like, all right, well, I need you to do this and this and this for me and help me out and that kind of thing. So, so she's
taller
more
too. So
she's taller.
Yeah. With her, she kind of definitely looked older than she was for sure. I remember.
Well, and acted just more mature than that. Yeah. So like my husband and I, we always joke about Mackenzie at the age of 10 could have moved out and had her own place and been just fine, like, and even now, like she's 16 and now she has her own car. So it's like, we don't worry about her at all. She goes she does what she needs to do school wise. She's in volleyball, so practice. She works part-time at a nursery at a church. So she has her own schedule, planner, all that stuff. I don't know how she was created the way she was, but I'm so grateful for her because I don't know what I would do without her. That's Carter's, wonderful. Carter is the middle and the only boy. Okay. He's just kind of in his own world. He doesn't have a sibling that he hangs out with and plays with like I had.
Right.
So, I mean, there's only 2 years difference between him and Mackenzie, but they're boy girl. They just are not in the same, not sharing the same interests. Then there's Elena, who's just turned 8. So there's a 5.5-year difference between her and Carter. There's absolutely no
common
nothing
interest.
that they're in common. Yeah. So it's funny because like Carter is almost like the middle youngest child, and then Elena is like the only child because of the age. Right. So she's just treated as the only child at this point because the other two are very independent. So but they're all good kids. Again, Carter being the older brother he reminds me, I would say he's a really good combination of Ken and Sean put together. Ken, the tormentor, and Sean, just the goofy and the energy. Yeah. So,
and we can relay that to him when he gets here. I guess he's going to be there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when Carter was younger and we would hang out with Sean would, I think, gravitate toward Carter because he, I think, has similar characteristics. So he would always kind of be like, hey, Carter, you have like all this energy literally bouncing off the walls. Let's go outside and play. Like, so I think he recognizes that a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, so they have a pretty good bond. Yeah.
Well done, Uncle Sean.
Yeah.
Crazy. So the benefits of having brothers taught you what? Sports?
I mean, I would say number one is probably patience.
Okay.
And I don't know how to express being calm, knowing, just being raised with brothers. There was always just loud noise, energy, roughhousing, rambunctious behavior to where I just coped with it by just remaining calm myself and just observing and watching and inserting myself when need be. And so I think, and you could talk to everybody I know and they would say I'm just a really even, calm person. I'm not
I would agree
high energy. I'm not squealy, giggly, excited. I don't know. And that Mackenzie's that way. Like, she's very similar to me too. But so to be raised with boys, because like I said, Shanna was off with her friends and doing her thing. I just got used to being in a loud environment and being calm myself. And I think that has helped me in really crazy, chaotic situations.
Yeah.
With boys, as you know, being raised with brothers. Yeah. I mean, there was always the rough housing, so it toughened me up, like physically. Yeah. We would be outside climbing trees or playing sports, whatever it was. So, building skill that way as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other than, I mean, I can't imagine being raised with girls and what that would be like. So
yeah,
I just can't.
And yet you have all those girl cousins.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
Yes.
And you got together with them quite often.
Especially around the holidays. Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
But throughout the year holidays, we would always
that's true.
find a reason to come hang out at Grandma's house. And they were kind of my female outlet, I guess, being raised with a bunch of boys. Yeah. They would bring out the female side of me. But then there was times where I'm just like, I can't relate to you girls. Like, not in like a bad way, but there's 3 sisters. Like because I always hung out with Emily, Ellen, and Maddie normally, just because of age. Right. Sammy when she was there, but that was like our group. But being the oldest of those, I took on more of like a big sister motherly role versus being one of them. Yeah. But I think that was just because that's what I was in my house with my brothers. I just naturally transitioned to only now having like 3 younger sisters or 4 younger sisters. So
yeah, that makes sense. And that, I guess, with that feeling of older sister with the girls and peacekeeper with the boys, that kind of taught leadership skills too, I suppose. Where you're kind of...
Yeah, it kind of, for me, it depends. I would say I'm more so a follower. I would let somebody else kind of take the lead, but then depending on the situation, I might, if nobody wanted to take the lead, then I would step up and say, well, here's what I think, and this is what we should do. Okay. But I wouldn't be the first one to like jump into the leadership role. I would just kind of, but that's always been kind of my MO. I would just sit and wait and observe and listen and watch and step up when I needed to or felt like I was the time to do that.
Yeah, I guess Annie, Vote, and Sam were the planners kind of thing. Make the list,
Yeah.
get it done, do it right.
And I found myself in that role during school, like when we had group projects. Nobody wanted to be the leader of the group, so it would then be I would step up and say, okay, well, here's what we have to do, and kind of delegate tasks. Finding myself a lot of times doing most of the work just to get it done and know that it's getting it done right. I found myself
with the
doing
brothers.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, right. Yeah.
Mom
Instead of arguing with them, to clean the house, I'll just do it myself because it'll be done right and it'll be done faster.
Everybody will be happy.
Yeah. Well, and that still carried on even now into being a mom and keeping the house clean and the laundry. I just do it myself, but I also find it therapeutic in a way too. Like it's accomplishing tasks. I'm a very task-driven person, so I know if I can get the house clean, boom, I can relax. The laundry's done. I can do whatever now, and it's also, like I said, I think it's a therapeutic for me too to get things done. And if the kids want to help, great. Otherwise, I can do it myself. So,
well, that's nice for them.
Yeah.
They weren't assigned things.
No. But I think then they're a little bit more willing, and when I do ask for help, then they know, okay, mom can't because she's busy, and they'll do it, and they won't push back or argue as much. When Tom asks them to do something, they're like, why don't you do it? You're not doing anything. So when I say, hey, I need you to vacuum today, they're like, okay, fine. Like I normally vacuum, but I can do it now. Like that kind of thing. So.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Kids don't want the pressure anyway, so it's nice that they can make that decision on their own.
Yeah.
And I remember you growing up with a lot of pets. You had the dogs. And did you just have dogs, or did you have other animals?
Nick and Ken had 2 hamsters.
Oh.
Bert and Ernie. I think it's still controversial in our house as why they died or how they died. But I don't know. They were just dead one day. I don't know. Nick said it was because they ate baseball cards and the ink killed them, but I don't know if that makes any sense now that I think about it out loud.
God, anything's possible.
And then I had a rabbit. I got her. We still don't know if it was a boy or girl, honestly. For my golden birthday, so the 8th of January, I got a bunny. Yeah. And my dad doesn't like animals, so he built it a cage to be in the garage. I mean, they poop a lot, right? And they smell, so it was like a daily task for me, but they didn't want that in the house. Makes sense.
No. Right.
Right. And then we went on a family vacation. I don't even know how old that rabbit was. It was several years old, but my brother Ken, as we've talked about already, he was supposed to take care of this rabbit, and he didn't. And so this rabbit passed away when we were gone on a 2-week road trip.
Oh, no.
So I was devastated. I know he felt terrible. I know he did, because it's the middle of summer, and this rabbit is in a cage outside, and he probably didn't give it enough water and feed it. But he did bury him or her before I got back home, so I didn't have to see a dead bunny. So,
and how old do you think you were about?
I got the bunny Piggus Jr., because apparently my mom had a bunny named Piggus at some point.
Yes.
So I named the bunny after that one. Gosh, I don't know, maybe 6, or the bunny was probably somewhere between 6 and 8 probably years old. So I would have been 14 to 16, somewhere in that age. Then. It lived a long life. And it was supposed to be a dwarf lop-eared bunny.
Okay.
But this thing was the size of a small dog. Like, it was not a dwarf at all. It had lop ears, the droopy ears.
Yeah.
It was not dwarf. It was a pretty, probably 25-pound bunny. Yeah. And it didn't like to be held, so it wasn't a cuddler. You hear the dogs barking. I apologize. I think our grocery delivery is here.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They said it
as you can see,
door.
The animal life continues in my house.
Yeah.
So,
how many dogs do you have now?
2. Faith is the one barking right now.
Okay.
She is a 4-year-old husky pit bull mix.
Oh, wow. Big?
I can send, not really. She's probably like 40 pounds, 45 pounds. Medium size, I would say. And then we recently, in March, I think, got another dog. It's a golden doodle. Her name is Reese.
Oh, nice.
And she's not quite a year yet, yeah, because February she'll be a year. So she's all puppy, and she's just like, she's taller and bigger than Faith, so she just doesn't I describe her as like a teenager. She's really tall and awkward, and she just has she's just all knees and elbows basically, and so she's a pretty goofy dog. And then we have 2 cats. I never thought I would own a cat in my life because I'm just such a dog person. Well, I grew up with dogs. Going back to your original question, like we had Shih Tzus. My mom experimented with like teacup Yorkies. That didn't go well because they kept getting out underneath the fence because they were so little and running away. Oh no! Because she wanted to breed them. Like that's what she loved, is like breeding we grew up with litters of Shih Tzu puppies, and that was a lot of fun. But then she tried it with the teacup Yorkies, and those things were just. And I'm sure my dad loved every bit of it. Having dogs in the house. Their last dog was Tootsie. Actually, but she passed away. Oh gosh, I think Kenzie was like 4 or 5 at the time, so it's been a long time since. And
that was the last dog, or last Shih Tzu.
Last dog was Tootsie, the Shih Tzu. Okay. Yeah. So she was just getting old and just staying in the basement basically. And so one day my dad took her and brought her to the vet to put her down because she had some health problems. Did it with nobody knowing, of course. So we're like, "Where's Tootsie?" Oh, I put her down. Oh, okay, thanks, Dad. You know, he grew up on a farm, you know, so it's just animals are supposed to be tools to him, you know. They're not part of the family, you know, like that kind of thing. So
so those 2 hamsters, we still don't know if Dad had anything to do with that.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I should ask him when I see him later. Remember Bert and Ernie, Dad? That? Yeah.
Oh my God. And so why the cats? Why suddenly?
Oh, so my husband is a cat person. He grew up with animals too, cats and dogs both. And so when we finally got married in our own house, we got a cat first. And we still have that cat, Brody, actually. He's 15. Nice. He's the best cat ever because he stays out of my way and he leaves me alone and he doesn't bug me and he doesn't jump on the counters and just get in your way. Like he'll only come and cuddle with me if I'm just sitting and reading a book or watching a show, and then I'm fine. We've had cats in the past. Actually, your brother Brian took my cat Coda from me.
Oh, okay.
It actually was my sister Shanna's cat first when she lived in an apartment, and then she couldn't bring it to her next apartment, so I'm like, sure, I'll take it, that's fine. And I did not like her at all. She was a pain in the butt. She still had her claws, you know, so she would shred things. She would not poop and pee in the litter box for some reason because she needed this special litter, whatever. like she was like the stereotypical cat for me, was Coda. Like that's why I didn't like cats, is because of her.
Yeah.
Brody was different. So we gave her away to Brian, and she's still there with them. I recently found out. Yeah. So that was 8 or 9 years ago or so. God, and then we had a cat named Jeter. My husband's a huge Yankee fan, so I was gonna say. we let the kids. We adopted him from Humane Society. Like, he was sick. Oh, good. So, long story short, when we told Carter that Elena was going to be a girl when I was pregnant with him or her, he said that he wanted a baby brother then, and I said, "Well, how about a boy cat instead?" So he agreed, and so Elena was born, and then we eventually went and got Jeter from my Humane Society, and all he said is it had to be a kitten, a boy, and orange. So we found an orange tabby cat. And on the way back from the Humane Society, we allowed the kids to name it, and they're like, "We're gonna name it Moon," and we're like, "Oh, okay. How about we choose the middle name?" And so we chose the middle name Jeter, and then from that point on, we just called the cat Jeter. But
well done.
Jeter had health issues, and he passed away pretty young at the age of 6. And on his little gravestone for him, it says Moon Jeter Wilkins. So
there it is.
He got his proper name in the end.
But back.
Yeah. So what else? We had a pit bull named Nevaeh. That was also an adoption. We did not choose that name. She came with that name. But she was the best dog ever. Just super laid back, really good. We got her when Carter was almost 2, and she was 2 at the time. So Carter, that was his dog, and she was the best. Like super sweet. Like he could jump on her, pull her ears, and cuddle with her, and she just took it. Like she was just the best.
Wow.
And so about a year ago, she was 13 when we had to put her down for health reasons. And so then we got Reese and replacement. And then to replace Jeter, we got a cat named Bruce. So Bruce and Brody, Reese and Faith is what we have in our house right now. So plus 3 kids and a husband. So yeah, it's a full house. A lot.
And with all those wonderful animals and experiences with animals, you had at one point looked at veterinarian school or...
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. My plan was going to MSU in Mankato here and get a zoology degree and go and do whatever with that. And I think I took classes about a year and a half total. I went to MSU with that degree in mind. So a lot of biology, chemistry, physics, all sorts of classes, labs, all that stuff. I knew I wanted to be a vet. I just hated the path. I did not like the courses, the classes, and it was miserable. And so at the time I was dating my now husband, and his mom, my mother-in-law, is still currently a professor in law enforcement at MSU. And so she talked to me about it, and she's like, well, what other interest do you have? And I went back to like my high school career assessment quizzes that we took, and law enforcement had been in my top 3. Well, let's take a couple law enforcement classes. So I did like an intro to law enforcement and some other things. And I really enjoyed it. And I really felt like, oh, this is a lot of fun. Like, let's do this. And
so you said in high school you took something that showed interest in that. And so what were these questions that showed interest in law enforcement?
They were, I don't know what class it was for, but they were numerous questions. I want to say probably 300 questions.
Wow.
You would answer them, and it was all based on your interests. Like, I like to garden. I like to work with my hands. I like to solve problems. Like questions like that.
Yeah.
And it would narrow down kind of these career paths for you.
Interesting.
So I took them in like probably junior year or sophomore year to just kind of get me focused on some career choices. And I just know that veterinary work was up there, law enforcement. And there was another one. I think it was like construction worker or something. Just because like I like to be outside. Yeah. I like to work with my hands. I like physical labor, that feeling like I was telling you about earlier of accomplishment, like getting something done and moving on to the next thing.
Yeah. So then you took law enforcement classes then?
Yeah. So I switched majors. I got minors in chemistry and biology because I had a bunch of classes already over the year and a half racked up. So I just continued to do that, but as a minor, thinking, well, maybe I could at some point in my law enforcement career do maybe forensic work or be in like a lab somewhere like they have on TV and taking fingerprints and DNA stuff. Yeah. So then I switched majors, and it only extended me probably like a semester because I was doing all my gen eds along with all that stuff. So it really didn't delay me. My getting pregnant delayed me more than switching majors. She was born in 2008. And I was supposed to, like, if you did the whole 4-year thing, I should have graduated in 2009, but I had to I think I took a semester off because she was born in November. So I took that spring semester off and just worked. And then I had to catch up and redo a couple of what's called skills academy training. So when I was pregnant, I couldn't do defensive tactics. I couldn't get like OC exposure, like that stuff. So I had to go back. The semester I went back, which would have been the following fall after she was born, is when I caught up with all that. And then I was able to graduate in 2010.
So when you
2010.
have your first baby and you are now going in to get these defensive skills,
it's
that
more
kind of fighting?
Control techniques versus strikes. I mean, we learn strikes and kicks, punches, that kind of thing, but a lot of what we focus on, especially now, is defense and control is what we do. So we're either defending ourselves against an attacker or we're trying to control the person to typically get them under arrest or bring them somewhere that they don't want to go. So the defensive tactics in college that I was taking, it would be physical fitness training for the first half. It was like a 4-hour class. So 2 hours of it was stretching, physical fitness, cardio. And then the second half was when we'd actually start doing the moves, handcuffing techniques, 1-person takedown, 2-person takedown moves, like all that stuff. And we still practice that on probably 2 times a year at my current department. 4 times of training, and 2 of those times are dedicated to like refreshing our defensive tactic skills and build off of them if there's new things out there to implement.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking of what kind of a crazy thing's going on in your head where you just had a baby. First, your body's got to be built back up to do this kind of physical work. And you're now thinking about your child and motherhood and still having to concentrate on defending yourself. Did that kind of freak you out a little bit? Or was it just like, no, it's good that I'm learning this stuff?
I think at the time I was going through school and having Mackenzie and Carter, I didn't really think about like the scary side of the job. It was more, I need to be physically fit and strong in order to protect myself, do my job, so that at the end of the day, I can come home to my family and be, safe and not hurt.
Yeah.
After I had Elena a few years into being a police officer for Mankato, I think that's when my mind started to shift. Like, I'm a mom. I have these young kids. Because Elena, she was born when I was in a position at MSU as the college resource officer. So I was still law enforcement officer for Mankato, but my area of patrol was up at the college. And so I dealt with anything on campus. So my schedule was Monday through Friday, 8 to 4.
Okay.
So she was born and grew up in a time where I wasn't working shift work. I was always home for, dinner and bedtime and all that stuff. Where the other 2 were used to my crazy hours of working evenings and overnights and sometimes days. Yeah. So it didn't really hit me until it started affecting Elena when COVID hit. So Elena was born in 2016. She had 4 years of me always being there at bedtime and dinner time.
Yeah.
So when COVID hit, the campus shut down. And so I went back to patrol. And then we just had a crazy patrol schedule during COVID because they didn't want shifts overlapping. So we had 2 shifts, basically, days and nights. And I was days, thankfully, but they were 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So 12-hour days, 5 days in a row. So there were times where I wasn't there for dinner. And sometimes if it was a late shift, she would have to be put to bed by somebody else, not me. So that's when things opened my eyes because of how it affected her, because of what she was so used to.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then COVID just sucked for everyone in general.
Yeah.
And nobody liked their lives or what they were doing as far as work. And so it just all that came together where I'm like, do I still want to be a cop? Do I still want to keep doing this?
Yeah.
I had a couple opportunities at work open up. I was a regular patrol officer, but I had the opportunity in what's called our career development spot. I could be a sergeant, a road supervisor for a year. I took that opportunity just to see, would I be good at it? Could I do it? Did I want it if in the future a full-time spot were to come up as a sergeant? So I did that for a year, and that was terrible because as the least senior of the 6 sergeants, I was the least senior. And so when they did shift bidding on what shifts they wanted to work, I was stuck on overnights for 8 months. And the overnight shift is 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Wow.
And it's a rotating shift. So you work 3 days, 2 days, 4 off. It's just all over the place as far as what days you work and how many in a row and what you have off. Yeah. And that was really tough on the family. That was really tough on Tom. It was really tough on the kids, especially Elena. And I just knew right now in this, with the age of my kids and where we are in life, if a full-time spot were to open up, I couldn't do it because I would more than likely be stuck on the overnights. And that is just not work-life balance was just terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it all kind of stars aligned for me when I was getting out of the sergeant role. Like my year was coming up, was August. And I had an officer who was a school resource officer at the time retiring. So I interviewed for his position to be a school resource officer. Nice. And I got it. And so I am the school resource officer. There's two in Mankato. I'm on the east side, and my partner Todd is on the west side. So I work Monday through Friday again, 8 to 4. And I'm at Mankato East, which is where I graduated back in 2005. So it's kind of fun to be back there.
I bet.
So that's what I've been doing since the fall of 23, so a little over a year now. I love it. It's a completely different position than patrol. Like, it's comparing apples to oranges. When people say, well, do you like it better? It's like, not necessarily I like it better or not, because it's completely different work. Like, I'm in a school building the entire day, talking to kids, talking to teachers, principal, and making sure people are getting along, but then dealing with incidents when they happen. Where on the road, you're subject to the radio. Just whoever calls 911, you get dispatched to that. You have your areas of patrol, but you're reactive to the radio. Where in the school, I can be a little bit more proactive, build those relationships, solve those conflicts before they were to boil up into maybe a fight or something worse.
Yeah. Nice.
And this role I have, if I want, for 7 years total. So this is my second year into my 7-year. Stretch.
So why does it have to end at 7 years? Do they?
I don't know. My department has a weird thing with like roles, and if you're not in patrol, you can be a detective for 4 or 5 years, but then you have to come back to patrol. You can be on our drug task force for 4 or 5 years, but then you have to come back to patrol. And then the school resource officer, once the officer retired before I took his spot, the department switched it to now the school resource officer has a cap, which is for some reason 7 years. It's a weird number. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right now, Kenzie's a sophomore, Carter's in 8th grade. So I will at least be the school resource officer once both of them go through their high schools. And my last school resource officer year will be Elena's 8th grade year. Then I go back to patrol before she comes into high school. And I always joke, like, I don't know, might be a good thing, because my husband and I always joke about her, and she's either going to be the CEO of a company one day or she's going to be in prison. Like, we just don't know. She just is so different than the other two, and
really
stubborn, and marches to her own beat, which is great because she's hilarious and keeps us on our toes, and we love her. But it's like, man, I don't know if you're going to be my best friend when you're a high schooler, or if you and I are going to be enemies. I just don't know. It can go either way at this point. So we always joke about that. Like, she's either going to be in prison or very successful. So.
And you, as a patrol officer, dealing with these college kids, and now you've got your own kids that are growing up in the system that you know very well. Did you find yourself going, okay, I'm going to put heavy limits on what my kids can do? Or were you just more instructive about this is what can happen, be ready for it? How did you find out which way to go with your own children? Did you get oversensitive about things, or overprotective, or were you just hands off, here's the deal kind of thing?
I think I used just communication and being honest with them and upfront. Like, I didn't want to hide anything from them, that they should really know what the real world is like out there, if you will, instead of them being surprised by it when they graduate, or them just smack them in the face one day. So like Kenzie and I have had really good conversations about, because she's already experiencing friends of her own who are going to parties and drinking and stuff like that. So
that's tough.
She, for whatever reason, maybe I had a part in or not, she chooses not to do that. Has a good group of friends who they all share similar interests, and that's not one of them. And I always tell her, like, hey, if you do happen to find yourself at a party where there's drinking going on, maybe you drink and you're drunk, just call me. I'd rather you be home and safe and not worry about consequences.
Yeah.
Because I tell her about my line of work. Like, I deal with that daily
all the time.
As drunk college kids who are afraid to call somebody for help because of the consequences. And so I tell her, like, no questions asked. You call me at 3 a.m. and you're drunk and you're like, Mom, I need a ride home, or I don't know where I'm at. I'll find you and bring you somewhere safe. For me, I think the tactic of just having those strong, hard conversations with them, but being honest and truthful about it. Because, I mean, there'll be times where I've had a really crappy day at work, whether it was for an incident that happened. I don't go into details, but I'll say, here's what I dealt with. This is what I just saw or, dealt with today.
Yeah.
And it just makes me appreciate them more. And like, man, you have really great kids, because there's some really terrible ones out there.
Yeah.
So you guys are great. Yeah.
Yeah. Please stay that way.
Yeah. And Carter's really the only one that asks me questions about the job. Kenzie and Elena really, they don't. And I don't really give much either. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I have coworkers with kids that talk about their job all the time, but then there's some that don't say a word. And if the wife or husband says, how was work? Good. Yeah. And then like, that's all you get. And I'm kind of that way with Tom. I think Tom, he's more like, tell me about the fun stuff, where I'm just like, it was fine. Like, but it's a daily thing I deal with where the average person doesn't. So in my brain, it's nothing special. But to the average citizen, it's like, what? You did that today, or that happened? And I was like, yeah, it's like a weekly thing. So I almost get desensitized. I mean, I do. I get desensitized to it.
I think you'd have to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to do is come home and rehash my day and talk about it. And, I've tried to leave work at work. And, for me, like I used to always have all my uniform stuff here at home. So I would change here, go to work, come back, change out of uniform. I was having a hard time with transitioning from police officer to mom. And so I finally started changing at work. So I show up to work in sweatpants and a t-shirt, get into all my gear. But at the end of the day, I leave all that gear in my locker at work, and I come home in sweatpants and a t-shirt, and I'm ready. I think that mentally just helps me.
Oh, for sure.
All right, you are no longer a police officer, Stephanie. You are now mom and wife, Stephanie. And I've been doing that, I would say, probably since COVID. And I think has made a huge difference in how I show up at home, whether it's at 3 a.m. when my shift is done, or 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So
that's great.
That has helped a lot with that transition. Yeah.
Good idea. Yeah. And I just spoke, my last guest was a friend of mine, Paul Chapikian, where he could have gone into law enforcement, but he did security work at a hospital. And then he just finds himself in these situations where, thank God, he has some of that know-how and experience, but he had his own way of coping with something that was tragic. So when you run into something like that, do you have a way of coping, meditation, getting back to physical stuff, or is there something that you learn to do to help cope with crazy tragic stuff?
I have found, I used to just keep it all bottled up and rehash it in my head, like whatever it was, which wasn't healthy. I found myself it would just bubble up at some point unexpectedly, whether it came out of me in anger or just crying emotional. Yeah. So once I recognized that, I would talk to my husband and be like, I just need you to listen. This is my crappy, call that I just had. And he's really good. So just for me, talking and getting it out there is one thing. Yeah. The other thing is always for me has been exercise, whether it's lifting weights, going for a run. That's a huge stress reliever for me to get it out of me. But then I have really good coworkers too. So if we were in an incident together, we always do a debriefing, a critical incident debriefing anyway, and talk about it. Okay. We go through the call, we go through everybody's role, what we did, how we're feeling, which helps too, because then you know, okay, I'm not the only one feeling this way. There's somebody else out there that's actually feeling the same way. You don't feel so isolated. Right. But for me I needed to not only talk about it with my partners, but also at home with my husband. With my kids, depending on what it is, I'll just say, hey, we had a child who was killed by a step sibling. Oh gosh, 4 years ago now. And that hit the department really, really hard. Right. Yeah. And for me, I wasn't first on scene. I wasn't directly involved with the patient, but just the thought of it, and that house actually is near where I live, and just driving by it every day, it just took a really big toll on me. And that was a day during our COVID shifts where I didn't get home till probably 10, 11 o'clock at night. And so my kids, they knew it was a bad incident. They didn't know what it was, but they were all there at the front door ready to give me a hug. which of course
No.
made me break down.
Yeah.
But that's what I needed,
now.
right? I was keeping it together at work until I could get down or get home and break down. And then they went to bed, and then Tom and I, we just talked in our bedroom about it. And that helped because normally I would just keep that all and be like, yep, work was fine. Everything was good, you know, and because I don't want that out in my house. I just know for maintenance, mental health maintenance for me, it's getting up and exercising is a huge thing. And I know if I'm not doing it, it does affect me negatively. So, it's critical that I keep going as far as workouts.
And are you in a pattern now where you have a set schedule of when you exercised? Did you have to fit that in here and there and here and there, or do you have a regiment that you stick to?
It's kind of goes off based off our week, what we have going on as far as kids, sportings, events, what I have to do for work. Because I work a lot of like the high school sports stuff. So football games, basketball games. So if I can't get up and do it in the morning before my shift, then I try to dedicate an hour to 2 hours after my shift. Okay. And I remember always feeling guilty as a mom, like, oh, here I get done at 4. I'm going to go and work out. We have a workout like exercise room in our agency's basement.
Nice. So
to stay there another hour, I'm like, I should be home, right, with my family and my kids. So I felt guilty as a mom taking that time for myself, but I had to get over that.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to Kenzie and Carter one day going, I need this hour and a half to myself after work. I hope you guys don't mind. It's not like I don't want to come home. I just need this to decompress, get some stress off. And they're like, yeah, Mom, do what you need to do. That's fine. And I'm like, this whole time, I'm thinking you guys are crying in your bedrooms because Mom's not home immediately at 4:01. And, you know, it's just unrealistic in my brain to be like, my kids are
perfectly
I should
natural
feel guilty,
response,
you know
though.
what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just the mom guilt thing, you know.
When you think about your cousins, like especially your girl cousins, and you guys are playing together, chatting with each other, now you're moms, and now you have motherhood stories. Are you able to relate to each other still at this point?
You know, I wish we could get together more because those cousins have kids now and they're young. And I was one of the first to start having kids.
Oh, right.
So I feel like we're in different phases of motherhood.
Yes.
Where Mackenzie is the oldest, basically cousin's kid on our side.
Yeah.
And I feel like I kind of missed out on that bonding time. And we live in the same city, right? But we don't hardly ever get together and just hang out and chat other than the holidays. But now that everyone has their own families, we don't really get together very often, even for Thanksgiving and Christmas anymore. Like Nick and Sarah, they always host, but it's usually just our family. We don't get many of the aunts and uncles and cousins together anymore. I don't really have that. We try to, usually with Annie being the planner, we've done it a couple times where we meet at Applebee's and we'll sit and chat. And it's a lot of fun. We just don't get together as often as we probably want. Yeah. But we're all busy, right? We've got little kids now and
all those different schedules.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just wild to me that all you cousins and nieces and nephews, and I was going to tell the listeners that too. So when your grandma, my mom, passed away, there was probably, 100 direct descendants from Bert and Gloria Brosnan in the world at large. Yeah. And now that was, because it's been 2 years now since grandma passed away?
2 years, yeah.
Crazy that there's probably well over 100 descendants now because there's been, 3 babies in the last couple of years. Yeah. That was wild. I was going to ask you about that too, because we're on patrol when my mom was still around, your grandma. Did you ever tell her to call you directly or Marcia to call you directly if something happened? Or was it just kind of assumed, unfortunately or fortunately, that, well, give Stephanie a call and let her do a drive-by or something to make sure grandma's all right?
Well, Marcia would reach out to me for maybe more so like neighborhood issues.
Oh, okay.
Like, hey, the neighbor's dog is barking. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, that's happening. Like stuff like that. And
right.
But as far as when it comes to like grandma, she got that medical alert, pendant.
That's right.
I think Anne, your sister Anne, was the first person to call for the medical people if that alert were to go off.
Okay.
And then I think I was the second because I always would answer my phone. And so I can recall there was one time when I got a call and I answered it, and it's the lady saying, "Hey, we got an alert for Gloria Brosnan that she had a fall and we can't get in touch with her or get her to respond." And so and I was on patrol.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm only a few minutes from the house. I'll drive by.
Nice.
So I stopped out, and she had slipped on the ice in front of her house on the sidewalk, and we know that steep hill that she lives on. And she was trying to, I don't think she was trying to stand up, but she was trying to scoot on her butt back toward the stairs of her house to be able to pull herself up.
Wow.
So I remember going, Grandma, So I get out and I help her to her feet. I'm like, "Are you okay?" I think she had a little scratch on her head and maybe some a bump on her wrist or something like that. And she's like, "Yeah, Grandma, I'm fine." So I pick her up and I just carry her inside. And I think Mark was home, but she couldn't call for help, right? She couldn't, Right. And it's daylight. She's on the sidewalk, but of course that street's not very busy anyway. So I carry her in and I put her on the couch right there in the front entry. And she's like, "You're strong." I'm like, "Thanks," but you weigh 90 pounds, so it's nothing. and then Mark comes down the stairs and what's going on? I'm like, "Oh, she hurt." And I wanted to stay, but Grandma's like, "No, go back to work. You're fine. I just need a Band-Aid or something." So, but that was the only time I really actually had to respond to her house. And she told me a couple stories about just in the area she lived, there'd be some drunk college kid thinking her house was his house, and she'd have to call the police. And so I heard about that the next morning, because at that time I was day shift, and so I'd come in and one of the overnight guys was like, "Hey, I got to meet your grandma last night." I'm like, "Oh, really?" Tell me more about that. And some drunk college kid broke in thinking it was his house, and he was sleeping on the couch, and don't worry, we had to wrestle him and get him out of there. And so talked to Grandma about that. So
insane. That was the most wildest experience. They're drunk. What are they going to do? And I'm sure you've had to deal with worse.
Yeah, and it's weird to me that it does happen more often than you think. The kids thinking, "This is my house, I'm locked out. It's okay if I break a window and unlock the door and come in." Or people will come out on their front porch and there's a person sleeping there or something because they couldn't get in. And so, "Well, this is my house, I'll just sleep here." But being a college town, it just...
Wow.
Usually it's alcohol-related calls for service that we deal with them on a nightly basis. Yeah.
People are nuts. Makes me I can't believe you have to deal with that. Well, I'm glad you're in a school environment now, which sure there's going to be chaos here and there, but I'm hoping, God forbid, I'm hoping that it's something that you can just scale down, like you said.
Yeah.
That's wild to me. So now that you're in a school and with all of these crazy school shootings, have you implemented, or did they, prior to you coming in, implement a bunch of scenarios that you have to follow now?
Well, the school district already has policies, procedures, protocols in place to prevent as much as you can, something like that. And that's always on my mind when I'm in that building.
I bet.
Because that's worst case scenario ever. That's the worst thing I could think of to happen at a school. Yeah. So that's always on my mind. And so when I'm in the school, I am always by the front door. Statistically, active shooters will come through the front door. I think it's 93% of the time. Statistically, there's one shooter versus two. Again, just all statistic based. Unfortunately, we have enough to where we can do research on. So for me, I am constantly by the front door. I'm always doing patrols throughout the school when everyone should be in class. That's when I go and do hallway checks, door checks. There's security measures in place, but if someone decides this is what they want to do, they're going to do it. It's just minimizing the casualties, minimizing the negative effects. We have, as much as we can, the school practices threat assessments if there were to be a behavior or something that comes up in a student.
Right.
They focus on that student and do a threat assessment, and it's not going to prevent all of it, but it might give that student the help they need, the support they need, the attention they need to make them maybe decide, no, this isn't what I want to do anymore, or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
thank God.
Yeah, it's like that'll be the worst day ever, and so for me, I have to try and prevent that in my head as best I can, and that's being right there at the front door.
Wow.
Waiting.
Wow. Yeah. And your kids are in your school? Mackenzie?
Yes. So Mackenzie, yes, is a sophomore there, and then next year Carter will be a freshman there as well.
Well, I think that's a relief to have them right there, to protect them as much as you can, if you can. Right. Scary stuff.
Yeah. So at the end of my day, I'm always exhausted because I'm at this heightened mental state for 8 hours of my day, and most of it's great. There's a lot of kids that I have good relationships with, and we check in with each other every day. I've made a lot of really good friends, and the teachers and the staff there. I don't ever dread going to work. Like, it's just a fun place to be. Yeah, there's some crap days when I actually have to do my job and be a police officer and deal with stuff. But for the most part, I'm there just hanging out in a school and talking to kids and adults. And yeah. So.
Have you found any of the kids asking about your job and maybe getting inspired by you? Anything like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about like my tools that I have on my belt. I mean, there's a lot of dumb questions like, how many people have you shot? 0. Thanks for asking. Like the kids. So there's a lot of interest, like how many people have you arrested? Have you tased anyone? Like those exciting questions, right?
Yeah.
And then we have what we call the Police Explorers program. So high school kids, if they wanted, can, for the school year, be involved in our department and learn about the jobs and roles of a law enforcement officer. So if it's something that you're interested in, they can get a little taste of it, and then they can decide, I love this, or nope, this isn't for me. So,
that's really cool.
We do annual kind of recruiting in the very beginning of the school year. We'll come and have a little tabling session and have applications for that program. And we did get, I think, 19 applications just from East High School. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
that's a good feeling.
Yeah. There's people that are actually still interested in doing the job. Yeah.
I was going to ask too, with your routine or trying to stay in shape and that kind of thing, do you think that's kind of rubbed off on Mackenzie and Carter also, Elena? I
think so, because Kenzie, with just being in sports, she's in her, what you call her off season. She's wanted a gym membership, so we got her a gym membership, and so she's very good at finding like healthy recipes, and we'll go grocery shopping for those items and protein shakes. So I think I got her down as far as instilling healthy habits. Carter, he's been struggling with some health issues, so he loves soccer and he will play it all his life, but it's more so getting him to gain weight. He's on a medication that has helped him just to check in and see how it's doing. Yeah. So that's kind of put a damper on his social life, his sports life. Yeah. He doesn't get out of the house much other than school. Sure. And he did play soccer this past fall, which was fine. But he tends to be more of a homebody on the weekends and stuff. I mean, he'll have friends over and hang out, but he's not as outgoing and social as Mackenzie is when it comes to getting out there. Yeah, it's a concern for him, I'm sure. Yeah. Yes. He's applied for a few jobs. He's got some interviews coming up, and he wants to make money and save money, and which is good. So, I mean, he loves Xbox. He'll put most of his money into Xbox, but hopefully he'll save some, because in a couple of years he'll be driving, and he wants this Dodge Challenger car. I don't know. I'm like, I'm not buying you a Dodge Challenger. So if you want it, you're gonna have to pay for it. So oh my God. But he's social. It's not like he's in his dungeon of a room all day long. It's just when we say, hey, we're gonna go out to eat, or hey, we're gonna go over to so and so's house. You want to come with? Nah, I'll just sit here and play my games. And but when he's at school, he's like the leader of his group. He's out and
Oh.
about, and he, so he doesn't know a stranger. He knows how to talk to people. So, which is
Yeah.
good, I guess.
Well, that's good that it's kind of trickling down. Because I'm
Yeah.
thinking with my kids too. I didn't work out. I think we just ate right, but I feel like I don't ever think I ever showed them, let's lift some barbells for a little while. But they're active and they're fine. But I just thought if you've got a routine like that, it would probably inspire your children to kind of be on top of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think so. Because as like me growing up in my family, we were always in sports. So that kept us active. Right. And when we would have family dinners, it was always, you had to eat your fruit and veggies first, drink your cup of milk, then you got the main dish. So with Steven being the youngest, he's always sat at the table because he wouldn't eat his vegetables. So it's like, sorry,
Steven.
Yeah. And you had to eat fast if you wanted a second helping because,
that's right.
Yeah.
Big boys ahead of you.
Right.
That's so funny. Let's get away from law enforcement. Let's say empathy or respect. Was that something that was shown to you or was told you had to do?
I think from my mom, because she has a really good relationship with Mackenzie.
Yeah. Which
reminds me of what I had with her. And I still do. I mean, we're so busy that I don't see her on a weekly basis like I used to. But it was just always, I see my mom as my best friend where I can go to her with any problem I have. We always did coffee and walking, and she was just kind of my outlet for everything. So with her, I find myself doing that same thing with Mackenzie. We just have open, honest, frank talks. And I think that's helped our relationship. Things from my mom, too, I learned of just stuff not to do. Like she always worried about how others felt or thought of her to a fault. And so growing up seeing that, I think I used to be that way and I'm slowly coming out of that. Because she is too. Like, I mean, she's 60 something now, but for me, I'm glad it's earlier where I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to do this because I want to do it. It's what I like to do. And why am I caring if it's going to affect him or her?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, as long as it's not a negative thing, like I'm just going to do what I want to do. And my husband, Tom, has helped me with that too. Because he's like, well, who cares what they think? Or they said that, like, just, you want to do it, so do it, Nice. Not worry about other people so much or put other people ahead of me. Okay. And that's what it was with my mom. And she always put others ahead of herself when she should have put herself first in situations. So so learning from that, seeing that, like what my mom has gone through. And then for my dad, I think I got just a strong work ethic from him. Like I saw how hard he worked to provide. And so we could go on vacations every year. So mom could stay part-time at her job. So I think I got my work ethic from him and just being kind of strong in the rock. Now, to a fault with my dad is he's not a lovey-dovey, touchy-feely guy. Yeah. So I think I got that from him. And it's not that I like that. Like I want to be the cuddler. I want to be, hey, give me a hug and I love you. But I just am not. Because I mean, neither one of my parents were that way anyway. I mean, we'd say, like, I love you at night and good night.
Okay.
But we never were huggers. But meeting my husband, who I've now been with for 20 years, that's how his family was. Oh. It was hugs when you walk in the door. It's hugs before you leave. It's I love you over the phone and in person. Yeah. So took a lot, like getting used to dating him in high school, marrying him. Even now, for me, it's now just second nature. But that was not what I grew up with. So he's more the cuddler, the touchy-feely one, the one to make the kids give him a hug and all that stuff. Yeah. Where for me, it's like a pat on the back. And it's not like I don't love them, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just for me, it's like just this awkward way to, like I show my love through action, where my husband shows his love through physical touch. So it's hard finding that middle ground between those two love languages. Right. So, but I tell my kids, like, this is how I grew up. So if you want me to hug you more, if you want me to cuddle with you, just ask and I will. So Mackenzie will every once in a while. Like, Mom sit next to me, and then she'll put her head on my shoulder.
Nice.
And then I'll put my arm around her, just like little steps as we go. Because I feel like I'm creating that in her, and I don't want her to be against it. You know what I mean? I want her to be lovey-dovey and cuddly, is what she, to her comfort level. But and Carter, I don't know, he's a boy, he doesn't want to touch anybody. Elena, though, like, give me a hug, every morning. Okay, here's your hug, so I'm sure that'll change as she gets older. But it's always before bed, we have to sit together at night and cuddle under a blanket and watch a show. And I love that. So the other two, I'm just like, I'm here if you want it, let me know. Where Tom just takes it, like, here, give me a hug, and how are you, so, which works too.
Yeah. You've made it work.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
So growing up with that, like, and I can see similar qualities in my siblings too. We're just not huggers. We're not, I love you people, but we just have this, we know we love each other and we'll do anything for each other. It doesn't have to be said.
Right.
And it just works, I guess. So
yeah. No, I find that your relationship in your family between the kids is very much, we'll defend you, we'll take care of you, and we'll be there no matter what. Just ask, and not like, there he is, big hug, let's run up and hug each other. Yeah. It's just like, how you doing? Good? Okay, we're good.
Yeah. And just like with Thanksgiving just passed, I walk in the house, happy Thanksgiving. I was like, happy Thanksgiving. And then it's done. Like, that's it. But then we go on with our normal, who wants to play a game? We'll grab, a plate of food, talk, that kind of thing. So the downside to all that is sometimes when there's like conflict, it doesn't come out.
Oh.
So, like, if, for example, if Nick and Robbie were fighting over something, they're not going to sit down and face-to-face talk to each other about it and try to resolve it.
No.
They're going to go to their wives and complain, and then they're going to go to mom and dad and complain. Like, Robbie's doing this, and Nick's doing this. And instead of, and I'm sure they come together at some point, but I'm sure it's not productive. I'm sure it's just yelling and name-calling and kind of like when they were younger, because that's how I just told, because they had a recent conflict where I told my mom, like, they just need to physically fight each other and get it over with, because
and be done.
That's what they did when they were younger. So just get it done with. Yeah. So I find that conflict is hard for my siblings to talk about and bring it out there for everyone to, because it just, and if it's brought up, it's arguing and it doesn't become productive because we're all stubborn and hard-headed. So
it's interesting, isn't it, how the different conflicts in a family are hard to work out. I mean, I know I have that with some of the siblings too. And it's like when you finally get together to be about the conflict, and yet there is the conflict.
Yeah.
And you want to just shove it under the rug or whatever. If we have to be together at Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, we'll just do all the top stuff and not worry about that underflow, which is not good. I'm finding that out in this day and age in my lifetime, that if you don't talk about it, then you don't get resolved with any of it. So,
well, it's uncomfortable, right? Nobody likes confrontation.
Yeah.
And there's times where that's my job is every day I'm confronting problems. So there's parts of me when I'm home, whether it's in my own house or at a family member's and there's conflict, I just don't want to deal with it. Like, I got done with 8 hours of conflict. You guys figure it out. I'm just going to sit here and watch, So, because I think naturally some of my siblings are like, are you going to say anything? Are you do anything? I'm like, not my job. I am not on duty right now. Figure it out.
If they want to pay me.
Yeah. Like, you don't, but I'm not afraid to step up if needed. Because recently at Thanksgiving, I'd hosted my in-laws at my house, and there was conflict between my mother-in-law and my husband. They were like arguing and yelling at each other about something. And then my father-in-law stepped in and was arguing and yelling. And I'm in the kitchen with Mackenzie, and we're just staring at each other. Like, do I go in there? Do I stay in here? And it was fine. Like, they didn't resolve it, but they stopped arguing. And I could have went in there and be like, you're being a jerk. Don't say that. you should be quiet. It's none of your business. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But that wouldn't have helped, because then it just would have
Right.
brought me into there. And
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's great
I
that you
just pick
can
and choose my battles.
as you should, right?
Get into.
Everybody should just pick and choose their battles.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Like,
it would
what's
be
really
great.
important.
Yeah. But the knowledge, not that I want experience in conflict, but the knowledge of how to deal with conflict is probably something that should be covered in school. You know, you got to be taught
Yes.
these things, because
Yeah.
you just, everybody's got their layers of issues that don't know how to approach a certain person with a certain personality. And it's you, even with, you know, husband and wife stuff, you have to know how to talk to each other without getting too emotional or putting your thoughts as to what the way they think they should be doing something. I'm sure it's just a madhouse of craziness inside somebody's head.
Yeah. And I've noticed with, you know, being around high schoolers most of my days, it's they struggle to control their emotions, whatever that emotion is. And they just don't have any like conflict resolution skills. A lot of these kids either resort to physically fighting or just having screaming matches.
Yeah.
And it just comes down to sitting in a room across the table from each other and listening to each other, giving each person the time and space to talk about what their feelings, how they feel wronged, and then to have both sides say that, and then, okay, how do we move forward? How do we resolve this? But also understanding, like, you guys might not ever be friends again, but let's try to learn how to coexist and be civil to each other. Like, that's a daily conversation that I have with these kids, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But that's what I've noticed is these kids just don't have the proper coping mechanisms with whatever it is that they're going through and experiencing. So.
Right. Because that, like you say, comes out in different ways. It doesn't just textbook, okay, here's what's happening at home, so I'm going to do this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And are you given, prior to going into the school, are you given some kind of techniques to work off of, or does this just come naturally to you?
A little bit of both. Growing up with brothers really did help with resolving conflicts and stopping fighting. Even through school, I was in roles of peacekeeping, mediator, like elementary, high school, that kind of thing. I wasn't the one to stir the pot and cause drama. I don't like drama. Mackenzie's that way too. Like when there's drama with her friends, she just avoids it, keeps herself out of it. So I tend to be a really good neutral party. But then with the job, we get training all the time on de-escalation and conflict resolution.
Okay.
But then I also have been learning in my year and a few months with the school system how their techniques and ways they deal with the high school kids and resolving issues with that. So a little bit of my own experience, my on-the-job training, and then as my newish role here as the school resource officer, learning how the technique, like the principal and the assistant principals, how do they resolve issues among the students. Good. So constantly learning, constantly.
And that brought up another thought to me too, as far as teaching your kids defense moves, or have you and Tom ever done that kind of thing with Mackenzie, Carter? I know Lena's kind of...
No, actually, I haven't honestly even thought about like putting them through a course. Like we tried karate and taekwondo, and neither one of them, the older two, were interested in that. Neither one's really a physical person. Like we always thought Carter would want to do like football or something, but he doesn't like contact sports. Soccer, he gets so mad when he gets like bumped into. It's like, dude, you're playing soccer. Like you're gonna get elbowed. Your feet are gonna get stepped on. Your shins are gonna get kicked. He just doesn't like. He's never been one to seek out that like aggression. Like, don't get me wrong. Like he would fight Mackenzie to the death when they were like 4 and 6. And not hold back. Like he was giving it his all 100%, and which I warned her about, and she still picked on him and then learned the hard way. When you get Carter mad, this is what's going to happen. It's going to happen. She learned quick. To not instigate a fight with him.
Bear, but
So, but he won't like seek it out. But yeah, as far as like defensive tactics, like classes, like I'd never, like Carter and I will wrestle because he wants to like be able to beat me, and he's yet to do that. Like the other day he wanted to do a plank, you know, a plank hold is.
Yeah.
So he was like challenging me to this plank hold, and he's like, let's plank and see who can do it longer. And I was like, okay, fine. We planked, and he's sitting there, and he's like shaky, and he's looking at me, and I'm just sitting there going, you just let me know when you want to be done. Like, I thought he could go longer than, I think it was maybe a minute and a half at most that we sat there. And don't get me wrong, like, I could feel myself fatiguing as well, but I'm like, I'm going to show him that I'm fatiguing. Like, I'm going to act like I could do this all day. And so when we were done, he was like, how long do you think you can hold it? I'm like, I don't know. I've never
timed it.
Maxed out on a plank before, and well, we should time you and see how long. I'm like, I don't want to do that. That sounds boring. Like, so he'll like challenge me, like, and he's interested in building muscle and gaining strength. He's gaining weight now. He's all about, well, I want to build muscle now and be strong. And so I'll show him.
Good. Like,
he'll come to me and be like, we got dumbbells in the basement and a yoga ball, so that stuff. So he's asked me how to gain strength, but nothing about, if somebody were to come at me, what do you do? You know, like that kind of thing. And Kenzie, even, she doesn't either, but it's never really been something I thought about, actually. But with her going into her college years ahead of her, maybe it might be something where because I know they offer those classes at college, like at MSU. I know that. Right. That she could take a women's
I think you could show
class.
her a couple of moves too.
Yeah. And actually, Tom, when he used to work out at the sex offender program in St. Peter, he had also defensive tactics. And so he would come home and say, hey, guys, I learned this move, and show them. And
that's cool.
And they were interested. It wasn't like they were like, not again, Dad, you know, like that. So they were interested. So he would bring that home. Where for me, I don't know. I try to compartmentalize and keep work at work, and home is different. But if they have questions, you know, ask, or I'll show you whatever you want to know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Well,
I think in this day and age, it's pre-prepared is better than getting, especially on a college campus. Right. People are crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Cool.
We always taught them like stranger danger. You know, if somebody tries to grab you, scream your head off, and anything goes, scratch, claw, kick, punch, whatever you got to do. You know, like we started that when they were young, but nothing really further into the adult world. Yeah.
Right. How tall is Mackenzie now? Is she taller than you?
Well, Carter is taller than Mackenzie now. He's like, I think he's 5'9", and Mackenzie, I'm only 5'4.5", sometimes 5'4 3/4". So got to get that in there. I wish I was taller, but I think Kenzie's 5'6", maybe 5'7", something like that. Yeah. So she's just a couple inches taller.
So fast. And how is
feet
Elena
now? 10.5 in women's. Like, blows my mind. Carter's 10.5 in men's. Elena is. I don't even know how tall Elena is, but she's getting there too.
Yeah. So. She shoulder height yet?
Not quite.
Oh, okay.
She might actually be shoulder height because her head comes to about here when I give her a hug. So I would say she's probably shoulder height. Oh, and she's a third grader.
Well, I just know it goes fast.
Yes. Yeah. I just was like talking about graduation with Mackenzie. I'm like, you have 2 years left. I mean, 2.5.
What is happening?
And then you're going to graduate. She wants to go to Phoenix, somewhere in Phoenix for school, and live with either Shanna or Sean.
Wow.
Either ASU or Grand Canyon University or something like that. She just doesn't want to be in Minnesota anymore, as far as because of the cold, the weather. Yeah. Well, she reminds me of Shanna that way. Like, she just hates the cold and that kind of thing. So she's like, I'm going to go to Phoenix as soon as I can. Yeah. Where Carter, I don't think Carter thinks past the moment he's in. Yeah. Where Mackenzie is the planner. Yeah. She is. Wow. She's prepared.
Do you know does she have interests that she wants to get into yet?
She's kind of all over the place. She's thinking the medical field. She's actually going through school now. They offer a CNA course at the high school level, like a PCA, a personal care assistant. Oh. You have to go through so many hours of school and then clinicals, so like the hands-on test out of that, and then you're licensed, and then you can go and work at like a nursing home or an assisted facility. Nice. So she's doing that. She kind of goes back and forth between a medical career or like teaching. She might want to do teacher. Carter was thinking law enforcement because he wanted to be on a SWAT team. Because I'm like, well, you have to start as a police officer first and make your way onto a SWAT team. And then he was like, oh, well, I don't really want to do that. I'm like, yeah, do something else, please. He thought about engineering at one point. Then it was, I'm just going to be a YouTuber. You know, every kid goes through that phase.
Yeah.
And now I think he said he's just going to go for business, get like a business degree and see where that takes him.
Oh.
Elena said she's going to be a janitor because she likes to be in the schools, and she really likes the janitors at her elementary school, which is great.
Aw,
you know,
yeah.
says hi to them all the time. So I'm like, hey, if you want to be a janitor, be a janitor. At least it's not prison, you know? So it's a job.
Just don't be a janitor in a prison.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I could see her doing teaching too, because she really, really likes school and enjoys that a lot. So
interesting. Well, good for her. Well, great kids, all three.
Yeah.
Say hi to them for me.
I will.
And I will say hi to Carter on YouTube. See if he wants to be on the podcast. Right. Yeah. Nothing to do with talking to people. No. That's all right. Good. All right, listeners. Well, thank you for joining us. Let me know if your station in life in your number child that you were in your family produced these kind of caretaker attitudes or clean up after attitudes or psychological attitudes to help your family just get along, survive, and be patient with each other. But I just kind of like to know what number you were in your family and how that affected you and your life. So obviously the middle child has given us that perspective, and I appreciate that very much today, Stephanie. And law enforcement is quite a lofty and psychologically draining, I would assume. I'm glad you're in the situation where you're in the school and you get to talk to kids and inspire kids. And teaching conflict resolution is huge in this time right now. I mean, it always has been, but I really wish that would be in the curriculum of teaching children. This is just an everyday thing. And the more you are prepared for any conflict that comes up, the better off your life will be, and the person that you're dealing with will learn and respect you also. So please keep that in mind. And also, we're around the holiday season, so please take care of yourself first. And if you see a sad face out there, give them a nice smile for the holidays. You never know what anybody's going through, so be kind to each other. Thank you, Stephanie. Please say hi to the family for me there in Mankato, Minnesota.
I will. Thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Good. Thank you. And maybe we'll do it again on some other topic.
Yeah. Yeah. I look forward to that.
Okay. Well, I love you very much. Thank you.
Too. Yeah. And Merry Christmas.
Hugs. Merry Christmas.
Yeah.